Let me introduce you to my old friend Kenneth Alford. He's probably one of the oldest surviving specimens of ham radio, and I've known him for over 50 years. In fact, he got me my first job. My friend Kenneth Alford, G2DX.
What a pleasant introduction. Now, may I say G6CJ from G2DX. And Roger, we're going back now in my long existence to the period before the First War, when it all started at school, and when I was attracted by a thing which is almost out of fashion now, called a Wimshurst machine, which used to produce sparks, and in those days sparks was radio. 1910, 1911, and we started to learn what was going on in the world of radio. In 1912, I applied to the post office for a license. In those days, you had to apply for a license which said, this is a license to conduct radio experiments. That was all that was said. I got a license. It came with the Postmaster General's signature on it, which was rather novelty, and it said nothing about the power to be used and nothing about the wavelength or frequencies to be used. I had a perfectly open hand to do exactly what I liked. Quite remarkable. Anyway, that's just the start of the show. Now, what was the first excitement? The first excitement that I can put down as a point of interest was the tragedy of the Titanic, the ship which went down with 2,000 people drowned. Now, I was away at the time, so I didn't hear the actual accident as it happened with the wireless traffic which was going on, but I did hear the communications between a PO liner which was rushing to the scene of the Titanic disaster, giving them streams and streams and streams of passengers' names who were missing. Thing I'll never forget. I've got some of the script of it even now. That's 1912, and when we got on a bit further, of course, the First War started to gloom, and nobody got excited about it. Everybody thought it was a casual affair, until after the build-up had started. I was listening every day and every night to what was going on from the German station at Hamburg, very large station of those days, Spark station, at Noordijk, the place. And I heard at about 9:45 at night this station calling CQ. The CQ was in use then. And he was sending out a certain sentence in Germany time after time. He must have sent it out 100 times with script in between. And that message said, Krieg ist erklärt gegen Russland und Frankreich. War is declared against France and Russia. There's the most dreadful words, I think, that I'd ever heard of, perhaps before or since. Well, I rushed out down the town to tell I was going to the newspaper office, and the people saw me running, and they said, what's he shouting about? War, the people said. He was saying about war he's talking about. Oh, it's that wireless bastard again. Don't take any notes of him. That was my epitaph at Kendal in Westlands. Well, Krieg ist erklärt. That was the story. And it went, of course, through the war. And I went with it, with the war, did my stuff as best I could, with the privilege probably never exceeded by anybody of meeting the highest scientific people in the world at that time. And to finish it all, while I was this was at Farnborough, doing aerodynamics, nothing to do with radio. But in 1917, a new arrival came to Farnborough in the shape of Robert Watson Watt. And he was attached to our department as a meteorologist to tell us the state of things upstairs when we wanted to fly. Of course, what became of Robert Watson Watt is history now, and it was a wonderful experience for me to know him. We got extremely friendly, and I was able to help him in his first experiments, which were published, namely the origin, the position on this earth where atmospherics are born, exited they call them in those days, in the center of Arabia. I was able to take part in that. So it went on, and at Farnborough on the 11th of September 1918, on a crystal set which was set up in the drawing office, I heard the Eiffel Tower station say, "La guerre est finie." The war is finished. Now, and that was another exciting moment. So it went on, we got to the end of the first war, and we start the second. Fred, start the second war, will you?
Well, you want me to talk about the Second World War. Everybody's heard about what I did in the Second World War if they looked at the BBC. I think what's quite important was what happened between the wars. And the first thing was that our friend Ken was one of the pioneers of international DX. He made one of the first contacts by radio with Australia, and I heard the signals and I can still remember them. They were quite unique. It was quite an occasion. But of course it's been done many times since. Anybody can do it nowadays. I got my license in 1926, and it was a few years before I really got going, but when I eventually got my license to communicate outside the country, I really started doing a bit of DX, and I got interested in aerials. And being a professional, I always felt I was rather a bit of a cheat, but I could always keep a chapter or two ahead of the boys in the book, and my interest in aerials led to me becoming a sort of oracle on aerials, which they all looked to me, and I used to get letters from the members of the RSGB all over the British Empire trying to sort out their aerial problems. Anyway, about 1933, I was playing with aerial farming in the small way as it was done then. I had some of the first aerials with reflectors on them, and we were learning all about how good they were and how it all worked. And then I saw Jim Lamb's famous article in QST about the crystal filter. Now, the crystal filter was invented in England a year or two before, but it didn't take on very well, and Dr. Robinson, who had the patents, went across to America, and he went to the ARRL and showed them this, and Jim Lamb built a communication receiver with a crystal filter, or at least he described how to make one in QST. I saw that article and I suddenly saw the light, because you must remember we didn't know anything about noise in those days. We didn't understand the signal to noise problems at all. But I suddenly saw the light and I realized that if I could shut down the bandwidth, I could get the signals out of the noise. So I decided to make one, and this is what I built. It's quite an elaborate piece of mechanical engineering as well as radio work, but as I was already interested in contests, I put 2 tuners on the thing so that I could hold the signal on one side while I was going on searching on the other. But this receiver was really one of the first communication receivers as we know them today. It was the first of the line, and it had a crystal filter, and of course with that and reflectors on my aerials, I was wiping the floor with everybody else. They used to ring me up and say, "How do you manage to work all this DX? We can't even hear it." I said, "Well, what you want is a decent receiver." Of course, it had to have plug-in coils in those days. We hadn't, the Oak switch hadn't been invented, and switches were no good, so we used plug-in coils. But there it is, that's the tuner unit, with the 2 tuners on it. And then there was another box with the intermediate amplifier, with the crystal in it. It all worked very well. Well, while I was building that, the HRO receiver was being designed. It came out the following year. So that's a little bit that I contributed, I suppose, towards the art of ham radio. And then, of course, the RSGB started writing handbooks, and I had to write a lot of handbook stuff. And it was all very tiresome, but all very satisfactory when it was done, especially as the resulting product saved the society during the war, when it became a great source of income, which otherwise they would have had none. And it was because of that handbook that they were able to start up again after the war immediately. Well, Kenneth, you've heard a little bit about what I was up to in the 30s. Now let's hear some more from you.
Well, that's very nice to look back like that. And shall we step on? We'll do just one quick reference looking back. 1923, I was privileged to be at the opening of 2LO when the broadcast system in this country first started. Great experience for me, and of course full of emotion and all that, which we don't find around these days. Anyway, after the excitement of getting the station going, I joined Captain H.J. Round and C.S. Franklin, the 2 greatest radio engineers there have ever been, and P.P. Eckersley, later chief editor of the BBC, to a meal afterwards at Simpson's or somewhere in the Stand after the opening, and it was very nice. Round sat there, Captain Round sat there saying nothing at all, as he always did, quiet, astute thinker. And eventually Eckersley said, "Round, you said nothing about this wonderful evening we've spent. Do say something about it. What do you think of this wonderful new system of broadcasting that we've started?" And Round stroked his chin and shook his head and said in a very low, pensive voice, "I think it is the greatest prostitution of a great science." And I think those words are more than historic in what we know about radio today. Great bottom. Never mind. That was 1923. Now let's jump on to the wonderful days when I took up an appointment with the Organic Company at Bedford as the chief technical advisor to the company. And I'm happy to say they were very successful, as a lot of the old-timers will say. And in 1924, the general manager came to me and said, "Here, there are 2 people coming for jobs here, and I don't know anything about this wireless business. You'd better take them on. You interview them, talk about them, see who they are, and then come back and tell me." So I saw Dud, and the other one was Harry Clark, 60T, the most splendid chap with a first-class science degree as well. So it didn't take me long to know that Dud and Harry Clark had got their minds set on radio. So I went back to the general manager, and he said, "Bring them in, I'm going to talk to them myself." So they went in. I don't know what he said to them, but he called me in after they'd gone, and he said, I've taken your advice, and we are taking them on the staff of the company. Your responsibility is in the book for taking them on. So I said, well, I'm quite willing to do it. And I said, well, what do you think of them? And Curtis, the general manager, said, I liked the little chap, that was Harry Clark, but I don't think much of the big one. And that's done. How nice. Anyway, the answer is that they were the most successful pair, I think, that ever worked together. The complete understanding was in two of them, and they did the Organic Company more than well. Wonderful story. And so the story goes on. I proceeded further on, carrying on with the latest development. Somebody in 1943, 44, 42, I don't know where it was, thereabouts, came up to me. I was with the Ministry of Defence then, which was my job after I'd left the Organic Company, and he'd got something in his hand, and he held his hand out, and I looked at it. It was a bit of wire and some blob in the middle of it, and he said, this thing is going to revolution the whole world of wireless, from top to bottom. I said, what do you call it? What is it? What the heck is it? And he said, it's a transistor. I said, I'm no wiser, but I'll take your word for it. That was in 1943. So that's how the present day started, as far as I was concerned. Now we're in the period where amateur radio is exercised in a most peculiar fashion. It is either a scientific exercise or it's a series of private telephones among 26,000 people. And that is amateur radio in 1980. What can one say? I can say a lot which perhaps is not complimentary. On the other hand, there are a few left, such as Dud, who are dedicated to the art of radio as we know it and as it is to come. So that is how we stand at the moment. Dud and I remain the closest friends, and Dud, I compliment you on all your great work over the years, not only for amateur radio but professionally as well. And I trust that the years to come, when you tend to slow down the handling of the tools, that happiness and success will survive. Thank you very much for your kind words.
Thank you, Kenneth. Spare my blushes. It only comes about because I've spent my life thinking about radio 24 hours a day. Anybody can do well if they do that.
Yeah, very nice. The last words one can say, what is amateur radio now? And anybody that can provide an answer, I'm prepared to listen to them. But I haven't heard it yet.